He wasn't breaking out. He was breaking in. The night the moon climbed the razor wire, the locks learned fear, and I learned what love turns into when the law fails. To find the man who murdered her, I became what hunts men. Keys don't open. This door, the moon does. At Whispering Narratives, we don't just tell stories, we keep the doors honest. Subscribe before the next full moon. Tonight, it rises inside. I used to think grief faded the way a bruise does, yellowing at the edges until it forgets itself. It doesn't. It learns the routes you take to work, learns the squeak your door makes in winter, learns the way your name sounds when nobody is left to say it with warmth. Grief becomes a map, and a map becomes a prison, and a prison needs only a moon to open. They kept him at Grayson, the man who took her, a washed concrete block with windows like black knuckles, rings of chain link and razor wire that sang whenever the wind wanted a mouth. I parked where I always parked and stared at the wall I hated, the soft pulse of security lights, and the fog my breath drew on the windshield. A fog that didn't fade like breath should, but crawled back into me like it had business in my ribs. Her photo hung from the visor, the corner rubbed to fur. If I held it just so, the moon would frame her face and make the smile look alive again. Names matter. Her name was May. I said it to the glass, and the glass answered with a tiny shiver. They put his name in the paper 6 winters ago. Elias Crane. He liked the sound of fear. That was what they didn't print, but what every echo told me. The trial ended the way cold ends a body. Slow, bureaucratic, without apology. Life in, no parole, no ceremony. A man folded into brick until his story stopped wriggling. Except stories don't stop. They dig. They find you in your sleep. They move you across town to an apartment that smells like dust and the pennies you keep meaning to roll. They hold you awake under a ceiling full of spider cracks, counting the times your heart tries to crawl out of its work. They blister under your skin when the moon grows too large to be polite. I took the needle last, the little trick the lab sold me when this all started, a chain to lay across the thing that moved in me, not silver through the heart. What fairy tale ever did a man of any use? Silver where the blood forgets which way is home, a net behind the eyes. I told them I'd be their test, and they told me I'd be a hero if I lived. Then I left and became something that didn't need the word. I wore the barcode they seared into my wrist like penance I could check out with. The moon was too close that night, as if somebody had dragged it down to read the fine print in my bones. I said May's name again and watched my pupils widen until I thought my head might overflow. The world narrowed until the only thing in it was concrete and breath and the place where he lay, smiling in his sleep. There was no plan I could draw that didn't end with blood, and I was tired of drawing plans that couldn't speak. Across the yard, a young guard fumbled a cigarette to life and held it like a saint holds a miracle he doesn't deserve. He looked up at the moon, and it looked down at him. And in that wait I saw him understand that his job was to keep doors honest in a world that had forgotten doors were ever honest. He put a hand on the fence, and the fence replied with a tremor that traveled into him and learned his heartbeat. I watched him from the car until I could not be a man in a car anymore. When I opened the door, winter climbed my throat and sat there, heavy as a name I didn't want to remember. I rolled my shoulders and something under the coat moved the way. A tide moves ashore, seams surrendered. The air smelled like the underside of storms. This is the part I pretend happens slowly, the gentleman's lie that body horror offers to keep the listener at ease. The truth is that it doesn't care what you want. The truth is that teeth arrive the way an argument arrives, all at once, and with the insult of certainty. My head taught itself a new hinge. My hands remembered the shape of the animal they were built to be. It hurt in a way that proves pain has a hierarchy, and I was underneath it, a rung no one had named. The night folded, the fence lifted like wet cloth. They will tell this as an escape attempt because that makes sense in a file. Nothing escaped that night. Something entered. Something that had learned the smell of bleach and fear and old coffee, and could follow it through every turn. In the glass of intake I saw myself as a tired man for a breath, the beard like winter moss, the eyes too dark to hold a future. Behind my face, hers appeared, not accusing, not sainted, not a memory cut to fit a story. Permission is a small nod you can feel in your jaw. I took it and destroyed the glass with my skull. Alarms discovered their purpose. The lights in C block knocked the color red into the hole and left it there to fight the dust. Somewhere a man flipped open a Bible for the first time and read words that had never belonged to his tongue. He wrote them wrong in his head. He prayed to get out when what he needed was to be found. He lifted his eyes to the ceiling because the ceiling is where verdicts hang when men are too small to hold them. All the while, the moon pressed its face to the cracked skylight and watched the way you watch a window across a street at 3 a.m. when every human sound has become a confession. You think a prison is built for men. It isn't. It's built for rules. A rule will keep a monster out until a word bigger than the rule comes to collect. Love is a word bigger than rules. So is loss. So is pack. So is hunger when it learns to spell itself with her name. I moved down those halls and counted the turns the way I had counted breaths beside May when she slept across my chest and the night forgave us for being poor. Oil, sweat, black mold, the yesterday of someone's soup, the particular cheap soap that sits on government sinks like a dare. And over it all the smell of Elias Crane's laughter ground into concrete where the mop never reaches. I followed it the way a man follows the last line of a letter. They sent men with lights, and the lights decided they were tired of being brave. One of the men said a word that began as a curse and ended as a prayer, because language loses track of itself when the old things put their hands back on the wheel. I passed him the way wind passes a tree that wants to be a tree very badly. He dropped to his knees and let go of being a story he would tell later. There is mercy in that, and I was not entirely gone. Every step made a sound like a sentence concluding. The floor remembered boots, and boots remembered men, and none of it mattered because I had claws now, and claws right in a hand that cannot be erased. I used them to put "let me in" where the flashlight would find it when the man it saved was ready to read. I told the door to C13 what I wanted, and it told me to wait my turn, and I told it that the moon had dragged the horizon down to my feet, and that turns were things we had left behind with have and have not. The hinge negotiated with me, and came to the conclusion that metal sometimes owes a debt to blood. He was smaller than I had made him in the night since. His hands were the kind that learned to grip bars like they were meant to do it. He had eyes that had spent too long trying to remember how they used to lie. He looked at me and said my name the way a man says the word bomb when he's very far from it and talking to impress the wrong woman. My name became a cheap trick in his mouth, and I took it back by stepping into the cell and making the world very narrow for a moment. He said he was sorry, as if the 2 syllables were a cloth he could lay across 6 winters. He told me about his childhood, the small-town pastor, the way his father's hands trembled when he drank, the night in a storm when a tree fell on a trailer and left the sky in the bathroom. He offered me these like coins to tip a man who already knows the check is paid. I listened because my body was a machine that sometimes still had places where a man could sit. I listened because I wanted to see if mercy would rise in me like a strange tide. He said he didn't mean to. He said he was high. He said her name like it burned, and I felt a small light go out in the back of my head, the one that keeps the human voice from becoming a howl. There's a silence that only exists inside rooms where something wrong is about to happen. It is a small silence, but it is entire. It settled across us, and in it I saw May at the lake, hair stuck to her lips by wind, saying we should buy the cheap cabin even if the porch leaned, because a porch should lean, otherwise where would it keep its secrets? I saw the way she slept on her side with one knee forward, like she was searching into dream. I saw the knife arc. I saw the ditch. I saw the way the trial forgot to say her name in a way that felt like a person. I saw her mother's hands crumple in her lap and find nothing to hold that didn't cut. I saw what men called justice when they must put on a tie. He tried to run through me, and there was the first sound of the night that was mine and only mine. I wish I could write it here and make you understand that I did not choose it the way a man chooses a door he prefers. It chose me the way gravity chooses a body, and I went where it put me. His throat was a soft thing that had learned to harden itself with lies, and those lies are poor armor. There was a heat like a stove door opening and a motion like a storm taking a roof. After there was a red that had not been asked to be beautiful and was because the moon is cruel like that. The alarms did their songs, and the radios learned new vowels. Men ran the way men do when the rules are on fire. I left the cell with something heavy in me and stepped into a hall that did not know yet what to name me. I wanted the night to end. I wanted the world to be small enough to fit her name and mine and nothing else, and the night did not accommodate me. It stretched. You think these stories end there. They do not. The door is only one mouth. Behind it are the teeth that make you polite. I found the young guard in the corridor with his hands open, the way a child opens his hands when he dreams of catching snow. His mouth worked and failed to build words. He had seen too much and not enough, which is the only way a man ever sees anything true. I stood over him, and the wolf put its head sideways the way wolves do when a thing does not fight. I had the blood of the man who killed her to the elbow, and the breath of him in my fur, and I was very terrible to look at. He held my eyes anyway. Sometimes ordinary courage is the only kind that counts. He didn't raise his weapon, he didn't beg. He said, very softly, as if explaining a door to a guest, that there were people here who had done nothing but show up for their lives and make the small errors we all make when we're tired. He said I could take what I came for and leave the rest. He said her name like a promise he had overheard. I did not want to hear it from a stranger, and I did not want to hear it from anyone, and I wanted to hear nothing else until the earth ended. The wolf hates the human voice because it makes the world complicated. I left him there with his cigarette, pack bent and his throat tight, and I went where the air told me to go, which was everywhere, which is too much for a creature that has learned a single task. I let the moon hold my neck, and I moved, and rooms learned my size, and locks wondered why they had ever been proud. There is a kind of dream that happens at the edges of revenge. It tastes like water you drank from a hose as a child, faintly green, faintly tin. It rotates the world by 1 degree so that hallways run uphill and benches creep toward you little by little, and the faces of the dead appear in the glass of silent televisions and speak without sound. In that dream, May walked beside me in the hall and did not need the floor. She looked at my hands and then at my mouth and then at the ceiling where the moon was swollen like a wound that chooses not to scab. She said that ending a thing is not the same as completing it. She said that sometimes there is a third choice that no one likes to name. She did not tell me what it was. They sent a team at last, men who have learned to be plural inside a room, a small storm in helmets and the hard breath of rules. They announced what they were, and I did not believe them because the night had already announced itself. They came at me with light and with small thunder and with words that tried to build a bridge from the known to the unknowable. I gave them the space the hallway allowed. One of them would not be breathing in an hour, not because I needed his breath, but because the night needed a signature and he was the only pen close to hand. If I tell you that I did not want it, I tell you the truth. If I tell you that I stopped it, I do not. The moon is a contract you sign with an ink you cannot see in daylight. It is binding. If you want the terms, look up when the glass is black. Something in me broke then. Not a bone, not a promise. The small engine in a man that runs a fan over. Anger to keep it from glowing white. It died the way a cricket dies when the frost speaks. I turned toward the yard and the smell of cold and the enormous patience of winter. I did not know what I wanted any longer. I knew only that the night had begun to repeat itself, and repetition is a rumor that becomes a law if you let it. I stood under the skylight and closed my eyes and asked the part of me that still knew how to speak in human to say her name softly. It did. Everything shook hands with it and settled. At dawn, the sirens learn shame. They tire of their own voice, and the light turns honest. The moon steps back and lets the horizon remember its job. The men with rules win everything at sunrise. They collect their dead and reshape their reports and write new training memos about flashlights and how the battery must be checked before the shift. As if that would help the next time the old things put their elbows on the table. I walked out of the yard with the night falling off me the way a coat falls when you forget your shape. My feet learned their human weight again and despised it. My mouth felt too small for the things it had held. On the concrete near the outer gate. I left a shoe without meaning to, and somewhere a crow made the sound a hinge makes when a room has been empty too long. I did not run. I traveled the space between the fence and the road quietly, because quiet was the only thing left that had not been sold. I opened the car and sat where I had sat 1,000 nights and laid my head against the steering wheel. My arms remembered a woman's back, and then forgot again because that is how mercy defends itself. My hands shook until the keys learned their place. I turned the engine and it made the noise machines make when they are loyal to something older than laws. I drove until the prison was a shape in the rear view that the morning would eventually erase. It did not erase it. It did what mornings do. It made the pain specific and gave it edges you could count. In the apartment, the air was stale and sweet, and the plants had decided to make do with what the window gave them. I washed until the water cooled and the sink argued with the red. I sat with the photo and did not look away from it, because looking away is what makes men learn to live like furniture. I said her name, and it fell into the room like a coin you don't pick up because you want to hear where it goes. The phone on the table blinked the way it had always blinked, machine patience disguised as courtesy. There were messages from men who loved me and did not know how to say so, and messages from women who loved someone else and had kept my number by accident, and one from a voice I did not recognize that said, "The county would like to remind me about my unpaid parking ticket. Rules, small teeth that chew forever on the world and soften nothing." I slept with the window open. The night smelled like wet iron and a neighbor's soap, and the electricity of rain that refuses to fall. I dreamed of the porch we could have bought, the one that leaned the right way, and the hammock we would have hung badly and learned to lie in anyway. In the dream, I was a man who could be late on a small bill and not feel punished, and May was laughing in the direction of her own laugh, as if she'd seen it running ahead and wanted to catch it with both hands. A dog I do not own climbed the steps and wagged a tail like forgiveness. A cloud made a shape we named, then forgot to remember. Moon arrived as a coin the sky owed the ocean, and the trees negotiated quietly with the wind. When I woke, the world was true and narrow, and my mouth tasted like the apology no one can make to you. I made coffee, and it proved the little joys were still engineered to hold up to heat. The news ran a crawl at the bottom that spelled pieces of me without ever writing my name. An expert in degrees, none of us had said a thing about rage, about cycles, about how our institutions must be strong enough to withstand weather of this kind. Weather, as if the night were a front that could be pushed east by noon. They put a map on the screen, and the red moved across it like a tongue. I stood. I walked to the sink. I put the cup down and did not spill, because the hands were mine again. I went to the mirror the way a man goes to a confessional he has not been in since he was a boy. I looked, and there he was, the one who had made the night small and the metal soft. He was not gone. He was merely asleep inside the shape I wear when I want the world to believe it is safe. Behind him, there she was. No halo, no glow, no rain tricks, no trick at all. I don't know if the dead come back, or if love makes rooms out of air that look like faces you can almost hold. I do know that permission can arrive after the fact and still do its work. I said that ending a thing is not the same as completing it. The third choice she did not name sat with me at the table where the bills and the photo and the keys had their small congress. The third choice was not forgiveness. Forgiveness is a word men use when they want to tidy a battlefield. The third choice was not forgetting. Forgetting is a grave you dig in the name of progress and fill with the good shirt you meant to save. The third choice was a kind of keeping the night in its place, keeping the animal where the animal belongs, keeping the door to the shadows honest by standing in it and not letting it wander the town. At Whispering Narratives, we don't just tell stories, we keep the doors honest. If you made it through this one, you kept yours. If you learned anything, let it be this. A lock is a promise made to fear. A moon is a contract that doesn't read your name first. Love is the word you say when the concrete thinks it can outlast you. It can't. Nothing does. Not rage, not rules, not the expert on the screen. When the nights come, the big ones, the red ones, the ones that break fences without touching them. Remember the young guard who kept his hands open, and remember the sound that belongs to no language, and remember the porch that leans the right way. I will not tell you that I am better. I am not. I am a man who can count his ribs when the light is wrong and hear a sound in his sleep that is not the wind. I am a man who knows where Grayson breathes and when, and I am a man who knows which morning the news will pretend it never happened. I am a man with her name in my mouth, like a seed that will never sprout, but also will never die. On certain nights I stand in the door and let the air describe the world to me. On certain nights, I shut the door and sit on the floor where the moonlight cannot be polite. On certain nights I am a stair no one sees leading down, and on ordinary nights when the laundry smells like anything but blood and the kettle takes its time and the apartment above mine plays a song that came out when I was too young to have. Been hurt in the ways I have been, I let the animal sleep. I pet its head in the mirror and it does not flinch. I tell it that I know the name of the forest and the name of the hall and the name of the cell and the name of the porch and the name of the morning. I tell it that I have decided to keep the door. It blinks once, the slow blink of a creature that knows the rules are always provisional. We agree to try again tomorrow, me and the thing I became for love and for loss and for the one crime that belongs to both. The night lets itself out. The room remembers its furniture. The cup on the table cools. Somewhere, not far, a fence hums to itself and counts the hours until it must sing. The moon is busy elsewhere, finding another window to lean on. May laughs on the lake where time isn't allowed. Hair in her mouth, hand on my wrist saying that the porch should lean or it will be lying about what it knows. I take the keys and walk to the door and open it, and the hinges tell me a truth that is small and perfect and enough. Some doors still work the old way. You turn. They yield. They don't ask a single question. They never did. At Whispering Narratives, we don't just tell stories. We keep the doors honest. If you made it past these bars, subscribe before the next full moon and share this with the one friend you'd break in to save. Blood debts demand courage and clicks. Pay both.